Hello, this is Alan Wheeler here on my YouTube channel where recently I've been talking about tarot and spirituality. The topic today will be the Archeon Tarot gives a logical explanation, and I've pulled 3 cards from the Archeon Tarot and a Oham symbol from my set of sticks made from various trees in the Irish tradition. And we'll kind of be looking at, do we need a scientific or reasonable explanation for spiritual things? Here, I've been introducing things on my altar here at the desk where my altar is. I keep a picture of my father when he was younger, and there he is as a young man. And he became a geographer after his studies. A professional geographer, wrote books, considered himself a scientist. So as I was growing up, my father was an atheist, and my mother was a Unitarian Universalist. So I suppose I ended up believing in everything and nothing when it came to religion. So our starting point for the question I came to the tarot cards to reflect on, the starting point of tarot cards and spirituality is kind of our spiritual basis. So some work with deity as real entities and may see the cards as divine messages, albeit translated into personal language. So polytheists from different cultures would see divine energies, divine entities that they are working with, perhaps through the cards. Others might see messages from the unconscious or from the higher self, and consider themselves to be working more with archetypes. And this reminds me of a kind of a visualization a friend of mine had back in college. And she told me about this picture she had of being in surgery, and she was laid out to be operated on, and she was operating on herself. And in the first part of her visualization or vision, Jesus was handing her the appropriate tools that she would need, the scalpel or suction or whatever she needed for the operation, to perform surgery on herself. Then the scene shifted, and she saw herself handing the needed tools to Jesus, who was doing the operation. And the picture moved back and forth between these two. And how I apply that is that some people might see that as literally divinity assisting in that operation on the self. And others might see it more as the higher self assisting. So I kind of translate that sometimes on Friday, if I'm good and get all my lesson plans done and all my essay grading done, then when I come in on Monday morning, everything's all taken care of, and I feel that my Friday self has been good to my Monday self. And so in this kind of sense, maybe different parts of ourselves are operating, um, setting ourselves up, working with ourselves. And that may be a higher self, accessing these archetypes. So that may be another way of looking at how the tarot cards work, or even spirituality in general. And then others would see the cards as simply psychological pattern making. And I've seen people refer to the tarot cards as just nothing more than a system of Barnum statements, which um, the those who are not true believers in any sense would say that all the um, statements, the meanings of the cards, they're not only archetypal and universal, they're so general that we can apply them easily. Anyone can apply them easily to any situation, um, so that magicians, like stage magicians, or those who are out and out frauds, just use them as a swindle. And believe me, I know people who think that way, certainly. And so these are things I think about. Are these, which is true, or is there a combination of truth in these things? I heard one Hindu guru say that it's not use worrying about this because, in effect, all three are the same, um, regardless of the source. They are used and misused the same, regardless. And I find some solace in that. But part of me is a true believer in that my emotions and imagination are captivated um, by divination, by spirituality, and part of me um, doubts and applies kind of the scientific reasoning um, that I associate with my father. And I had this one day, I had this meditation while driving, and often as I'm driving around, I'm in a relaxed state, I'm reflecting, meditating, and the whole world is my oracle card, and I may see things that are become analogies for me, or even synchronicities. And one day as I was driving, I saw a red cement mixer truck, um, and the company's name emblazoned on the big turning mechanism was Thomas. And instantly I thought of doubting Thomas from the Bible stories, um, the disciple who said, I won't believe what you're telling me about this resurrection unless I feel with my own hands, feel the nail scars um, with my own two hands. And I thought about this, how um, doubt is a part of our spiritual formation as the foundation of our beliefs are poured. And so, um, as I was thinking about this, um, I thought doubt serves a purpose in that it keeps that wet cement soft in the mixer until it's time to lay that foundation. Um, Also, doubt later seeing some cracks in a sidewalk. I thought uh, doubt can be like that jackhammer that takes out the old structures, ideas that have been um, laid that no longer serve. And so that doubt may keep us honest, and doubt may keep us realistic at times. And so it may be like, in a way, throwing something against the wall to see what sticks. And further reflecting about this, I thought within myself how spiritual experience waxes and wanes like the phases of the moon. Sometimes there seem to be cycles of experience, whether daily or weekly or in seasons, and so that there are kind of waves of experience. So there's mountaintops, where there's a peak mystical experience, but there's also valleys when cool reason comes in, the stark light of day comes in, and sometimes the spiritual ideas that come in the moonlight hold up well in the cold light of day. But sometimes the ideas don't sound quite as good when the intoxication wears off. So perhaps there is a function of applying reason and doubt to the mystical experiences, the spiritual ideas that come from the heart and the imagination. So with some of these ideas in play, I drew the Oham symbol and 3 cards from the Archeon tarot. And here was the stick that I drew. And that is the Onn, I believe it's spelled O-N-N, Oham symbol. And it stands for the gorse bush. And the gorse bush was one that I believe it was yearly that it was burned back because it's such a fast growing bush, but that it was very resilient, that it would always return from being burned back. And again, it gave me that idea that sometimes we just need to let everything that can be shaken, let it be shaken up. And we need to see what sticks and what holds up. And that the resilient pieces that we need for putting the puzzle together will stick with us, and be persistent and be perennial. And some of the ideas in the perennial philosophy that Aldous Huxley thought were shared by many religions are some of those ideas that keep coming back again and again. So the Oham symbol reminded me of the perennial nature of some of those things that we take by faith. The first card that I pulled was the Ace of Cups. And in the Archeon Tarot, the little white book of the Archeon Tarot, the little slogan that comes with this card goes like this: affairs of the heart lead to intrigue at the masquerade. And in the dim background, you can see some masks here. And that approach to the Ace of Cups leads me to the idea that these feelings of worship and devotion can be a bit of a delusion sometimes, something like how we say that romantic love can be blind. So kind of the negative or shadow look at this card might be a warning about those fantastical feelings. At the same time, however, Um, I can see the Ace of Cups as a symbol of the Holy Grail, um, or that the source where spirit pours from, the axis mundi, that the navel of the world or the universe. And um, while it may not be necessarily in Mexico City or Jerusalem or some literal location on earth, or the First Baptist Church, or this denomination or that religion, um, while that may be a bit deceptive, I do think it can reflect something higher and transcendent. So, um, as Jesus, in a conversation with the woman at the well, said, when she asked him, should we worship on this mountain or should we worship on that mountain? And he said, a day is coming and is already here when true worshipers will worship in spirit and in truth. So, with that idea, there's something more universal um, that these things point to. So perhaps those, um, the feelings and the rituals, may point to something higher, something transcendent. And so this card, in a way, provides both a rationale, a warning, and a rationale for spirituality. The next card I drew was the Queen of Swords. She is described in the Archeon Tarot Little White Book. Some of the key words include loss, as well as keen insight. And to me, she's a picture of the dark night of the soul, when those feelings of devotion vanish, and there's a kind of pruning going on. And I think this can work. It's part of our, the mystics found this part of the spiritual experience. Those cycles were necessary. And there's a Michael Card song I like very much. Um, let's see if I can remember the words. Um, could it be you make your presence known so often by your absence? So this was the idea that, like those cycles of the moon, that, or like um, Job, who didn't realize what was going on during his suffering, that those doubts did serve a purpose, and that experience um, was just part of the whole spiritual experience. Also, perhaps, as I reflected earlier, the keen insight of this queen provides a reality check when we do shake up and try to separate the wheat from the chaff, the superstition from what might be useful spirituality. The last card I pulled from the Archeon Tarot was the Eight of Wands. And in this deck, some of the keywords are ecstasy, nirvana, and here I just saw new growth and real fruit. And so it's possible that if we get lost in the um, feelings, the devotion, um, kind of the inner world, that this dark experience, whether of keen insight or of loss, can shake things up and lead to new growth and real fruit. And so that feeling of motivation and that we see often in the kind of rocketing out of the eight wands from the traditional tarot deck. Here it's pictured as a feeling of ecstasy or exhilaration, and which was certainly a big piece of the ancient Hindu spiritual experience. So there's some reflections, and I continue to think about the place of reason and logical explanations, as certainly blind faith doesn't seem like a useful path. So I'll continue to be thinking about that. Thank you so much for watching this video. And as always, I hope you feel a connection with people in your life, in online community, and on your spiritual path, whatever that might be. Thank you so much.